Yes, causing it. So
Well, the
who knows?
vaccinations don't stop you from getting COVID. All they do is they make your chances of survivability with less adverse effects. My brother has been fully vaccinated and boosted. He got COVID. I got a notification with a few others that have got the thing. And it was just like having a bad cold or a bad flu for a week, as opposed to being in the hospital for months and losing all of your respiratory conditions and your immune system. That's what the vaccine. But anyway,
I don't buy that. What it is if you have the mask, it reduces your likelihood of spreading it.
that's true.
Yeah.
Or this new Omicron doesn't matter. But the mask doesn't prevent you from getting it. At best, it helps you from spreading it.
Spreading it. Yeah.
Well, before I start, the best analogy I got of that, Bob, was it's like a man peeing his pants. If a man's not wearing pants and he has to go pee, he'll pee all over everybody.
Right.
He puts on if he, and everybody gets wet. If a person opposite is wearing something, well, the outside's going to get wet. And if he's wearing pants, well, he's going to get that warm feeling down his legs and he's going to get wet, but at least nobody else is going to get peed on. That's the effect of the mask, and that's the visual that you can use. That's how it works.
That's what.
Well, the thing that gets me is that they don't take any account for people who have had it and have the natural immunity, and they snub their nose at you, say, no, you got to get vaccinated anyways. Bull.
Yes, you do.
Someone who has had it is just well protected as someone who got vaccinated.
Not so, they're better protected, not just as well.
Exactly.
Protected.
Okay.
One of the dancers' brothers has had
a
it.
discussion that we can have many hours on, but we're now just past the 9 o'clock. People have stopped trickling in, so I think it's time to get started. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you all had a great new year. I want to thank Mark, who, as always, is here doing all the technical stuff. And all of these sessions that we're now just coming into in May, it will be 3 years of doing these. My God, it's been that long. And Mark has been an absolute godsend. He's got probably about 80% of all of the past sessions and documentations available. He's hosting on OC Caller's website. Without him, we couldn't do a lot of this. So thank you very much, Mark. I want to acknowledge that beforehand, after, and I cannot say it enough. Today, what we're going to be talking about is a question that came up. I got a number of emails asking me about body flow, and there was a big argument about body flow, and there's been a couple of discussions subsequently about body flow, and I figured, okay, this would be a good one to kick off with. So smooth dancing in body flow is defined as an action which allows the dancers to move comfortably without abrupt changes of direction or excessive stops, and dancing with the beats, steps that match the beat of music. Now that's important because it's a contradiction in itself in a lot of cases. You can break every one of those rules and still have smooth body flow. Come on, there we go. And again, I want to thank all the contributors to this, especially Ken, Tony, Rich Reel, Tim Mariner, Barry Wanson, the GSI and Collar Lab resources. There is a lot of material out there on body flow. There's a lot of really good material. I strongly recommend do your research and read it. So for good body flow, there's two conditions. The movement must be physically comfortable to allow the dancers to move naturally. And the second is, since it is dancing, the action should allow the dancers to match their beats or their steps to the beat of the music. And if something interferes with one or both of those conditions, what you've got is a disconnect in the body flow. And what happens is if you disconnect the body flow, you've got an overall bad experience for the dancers. They don't enjoy it. So if you consider it this way, dancing that has poor flow is not smooth. That means the dancers get tired easier. Tired dancers don't enjoy the dance and they dance poorly. A poor dancing experience says they're going to go home early. And dancers that had bad dancing experience and left early are unlikely to want to come back to another one of your dancers. So if you keep those two principles, physically comfortable and dancing to the music, if you keep those intact, you're going to have happy dancers. So let's take a little bit deeper look into these kinds of things. So there's The principal factors that affect smooth body flow and timing, and we've talked about this before, so this is a bit of a recap, so I'm going to go through it quickly. But the goal of timing is to allow the dancers to start moving with the first beat of the music and the first beat of a musical phrase, and then move slowly through the entire phrase without interruption until the dance action has been completed. Now, tempo, that's, if you consider it, that's the speed at which those beats fall. The dancing sensation of speed is affected by both the timing and the tempo, and they are two completely different things. But in general, 124 to 128 is a good dancing tempo. Below 122 or above 130 is too fast. Below 122 is generally too slow. I'm not saying you can't do them, but you do not want to have it consistently there. You want to have it consistently between 122 and 128. Or sorry, 124 and 128. Okay. Another thing to consider is mix the speed. You know, don't have everything at 124. If everything's at 124, that's just as uncomfortable. You need that little bit of variety. It does make a difference. Okay, so when we talk about the principles, the second one is body position. The caller's got to choose material so that the dancers are positioned at the completion of one call so that they can move smoothly into the next call without an abrupt change of direction. So if you consider, if I do heads star through and with the person behind you, do, si, do. Oh, sudden change of body flow. No caller would ever call that. That's bad body positioning. And that's an extreme example. The third one, hand availability. The hand that you use should be followed by the other hand for the next movement. Okay, the hand that is to be used next must be available at the completion of one call and the preceding action of the next call in order for it to be smooth. In other words, right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand. The next thing is anticipation. Now there's three types of anticipation that we have to be aware of as callers. The first is what we call encouraged or prompted anticipation. Okay, this is a rhyming word pattern that we sometimes encourage the dancers to anticipate a particular call. For example, lines go forward, up to the middle and back you reel, pass through. What comes next? Anybody? Up to the middle and back you reel, pass through.
Wheel and deal.
Wheel and deal. Up to the middle and back you float.
Load the boat.
Okay. Dixie style to an ocean wave. Take a little peek. What comes next?
Trade the wave.
Trade the wave. These are what we call encouraged or prompted anticipations. We've taught the dancers this, and we're encouraging them to move forward to the next step. This is kind of like, that's why I've got the boy and the girl kissing. You close your eyes, you move forward, you've got that moment, you anticipate the kiss. You've set all the parameters up to anticipate that. The next one is very, very similar. This is conditioned anticipation. It's the use of the same phrasing and calls repetitively, which develop a conditioned reflex. It's very similar, but it's not quite the same. Okay, we're not using prompts to cue them in. What we have is a constant repetitive action habit in our dance calling. You'll know when you have this, when you see the dancers start to perform the second call without you saying it. For instance, if you say ladies lead and they start doing a flutter wheel or a Dixie style, chances are that's because you've been calling it that way all the time. If you call past the ocean and the ladies automatically do a trade in the middle, you might consider, I call past the ocean ladies trade an awful lot. Double pass through and they automatically do a track two, which is very, very common in some places. You'll hear it before it's even called. Double pass through, toot, toot. Oh, I didn't call that. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to call cloverleaf or something. That's a conditioned anticipation response. You've trained them to do that. And the third one is an instinctive anticipation. This occurs when the momentum of the dancers, the way they're moving, creates an instinctive tendency or an anticipation to continue in a given body action in the same direction. For example, from facing line, touch a quarter, all eight circulate. The anticipated forward action is instinctive. if I'm in lines touch a quarter, almost always we're going to do a forward moving action. So if you drop hands and start moving forward, whatever the next call is, chances are you're going to be moving in the correct direction. The fifth thing affecting body flow is the execution, or the kinesiology, the body relationships between one dancer and another dancer. These are the factors that allow the dancers to hear the call, react to it, and execute it properly. Now, there's many things that go in with this, but there's three primary things that callers should focus on, because if you get these three things right, most of the rest will fall into place. One is the familiarity of material. The calls that you're using are going to affect the smoothness and the rate of the execution for the dancers. So if your dancers are familiar with the material, we were talking about this early with pass the ocean, swing through, recycle, or swing through, recycle on a new record label that Bob's got coming out, that has the girls leading on a recycle following a swing through. The dancers there are very familiar with it, but that may be unfamiliar with in other areas, which will create a hesitation. So precision of movement creates the sensation of smoothness from one person to the next, even in the same square, if they're familiar with the material. The second is the adequacy of training. Okay, this is how the dancers are taught, or even if the calls are taught differently geographically. We all teach the same calls, but we can use them differently. And if they're trained and they're used with a lot of variety and variation, you get a lot of smooth dancing. If they're not, when you get something that's just that little bit of different, or has that little bit of difference, it can create a bit of a hiccup. And the third is space availability. Okay, if your dancers are squeezed in tight, they can't dance very smoothly. Example, if I start from a double pass through or an 8-chain through formation, and I call flutter wheel or ladies chain from facing couples in a box or those center dancers, if I've set it up so that floor is crowded, it's generally not a good idea to do something. It's generally not a good idea to use tidal waves or two-phase lines to call things like, you know, pass the ocean, swing through, if I'm a really, really tight squeeze, because all the dancers have to come in and then they have to adjust out to make that kind of an action happen. So you've got to give them space. Number 6 is kinesthetics, or kinesiology. This refers to the study of body movements, and it includes considering the anatomy of people and how their physical characteristics act and affect on the way they move. So body movement needs to be comfortable so that the dancers can remain balanced and are able to manage their momentum. This is where we get into things like overflow. The body kinesthetics in overflow tend to get you turned and you lose that bit of equilibrium, and it just feels wrong. Even though it should be smooth, because of the overflow, it's suddenly uncomfortable. And number 7 on the list is body relationships. Body relationships play into what's called counter dancing, which is the need for dancers to turn around each other and counterbalance each other. You see a lack of this, and you see a lot of choppy dancing, especially at the A2 challenge and the challenge levels, because counter dancing is no longer part of the dance per se. It's more about the mathematical jigsaw puzzle and figuring it out, which is where the fun is. And that is, for them, that is where the fun is. They always make hand contact, or 99% of the time, make that hand contact so that they identify their position, their formation, and what their sequences are on the floor that they have to do. But from day one, we teach dancers hand contact. The reason we teach that is because that establishes what's called counter dancing and counterbalancing. And it refers to the body movement difficulties that are built into some square dance calls. And because those difficulties are part of the call, you need that counterbalance in order to succeed. The most obvious example of this is square through, where dancers are required to counterbalance each other with a hand contact and turn in a direction that is not flowing naturally. That's the inward turn each time. So they use to counter dance using each other as a reference and a hand point of contact and a flow participant to achieve that movement successfully. So let's take just a little bit deeper look at this. We already know that smooth dancing is about body flow, and this is when the timing That's the caller's command timing is the timing used to deliver the call. That's the command, or sorry, the lead time, how far ahead he gives it, the command time, the time it takes to say the call, and the execution time. That's the three aspects of timing that you have to get right. But when that timing matches the choreography and the movement of the body flows seamlessly, or in some cases, it's deliberately stopped for effect, leading to a new pattern. When you achieve this, you've got bodies in motion that flow and they move with the music comfortably and effectively and enjoyably. That's what body flow is all about. And that's what you want to achieve. Okay. So in order to achieve that, you have to be aware of what body flow is and what body flow is not. And we're going to start with the is not, because that's the important one. Body flow does not mean you cannot have a sudden change of direction. You can. Nor does it mean you cannot use the same hand twice. You can. It does, however, mean that when those things happen, they happen for a reason, and that reason is to enhance the body flow and the experience to bring harmony and happiness to the dance. Body flow doesn't mean that the direction of travel is smoothly flowing in the same direction all the time, because changes of direction are part of what dancing is all about. Body flow does not mean you can't have periods of stop and go dancing, or pauses, or check steps, because those are inherently part of the dance. Okay? All of these things happen. It's a dance. They should happen, but if they do happen, and they should, it happens intentionally, it happens judiciously, and it happens with a purpose. Okay? What body flow does mean is that all of these things exist in a smooth flowing square dance. Okay. And what it's going to do is it's going to increase the experience with a welcome expectation and not as a jarring digression from what you as a caller are trying to achieve. Okay. And what you're trying to achieve all the time is happy dancers that want to dance to you. So remember that, don't be black and white. You can't use the same hand twice. That's it. Oh, you can't have a direction change. That's it. That is not going to work. It is going to happen. It's always going to happen. It's going to happen for a reason. You control it. So callers use a myriad of choreographic sequences for dancers to dance to. And that's part of our job as a caller. If callers don't pay attention to body flow and hand use when moving from one position to the next, the result is a technically proper use of the defined movements in your choreographic sequences. But no matter how proper they are, they're both awkward and uncomfortable to dance. So I've got these two little pictures of a car, and that's what I want you to think of your body flow as. It's a car with moving parts. You get all these parts together, and the mechanic just slaps those parts, into the right place, tapes up the windshield with duct tape, welds the frame, puts an old kitchen chair on the floor of the car for a seat, and takes no time to appreciate any of the aesthetics. He is going to create a vehicle that's going to get you from point A to point B. It's not one you're going to want to drive to regularly, is it? Now consider those same parts, but in the same mechanic that takes the time to actually look at it, to design the car for not only functionality and efficiency of use, but also for comfort and style. The overall aesthetic look is very different, and chances are people are going to gravitate towards that one because it's the one they want to drive. It's the one they want to feel comfortable in. It's the one they want to be seen in. And just like square dancing, the only way to test a car is to drive it. Well, the only way to understand body flow and its effect on the dancers is to dance it. And I don't say this lightly because I was one of the biggest breakers of a lot of these rules, and I wasn't even aware of it. It is possible. Now we look at call analysis. We've had some great sessions on call analysis, and it's possible to do your call analysis and get it all wrong. Okay. There's a big difference between call analysis and danceability. It is important to do your call analysis, but it's equally important to dance it, just to be sure. It's possible to analyze movement with computer programs using kinesthetic logic and definitions and determine that technically this should flow. However, the reality is once you factor in real people, you have a whole bunch of these other variables prop up, such as expectation, room for the action to take place, the precedent and subsequent calls. There's so many other things that you got to go back and check again and again. And that can only be experienced by dancing. Just as a note, always check both your prepared choreography and the choreography that you borrow for body flow, for hand use, and dance them from both the left and the right hand dancer positions, for both from a static square, the head's position and the side position. I call this the 4-point check, and it's a good way of thinking of it, because it's very easy to look at the head couple. You dance the man, you dance the lady. It's absolutely perfect. But you've got one man or one lady going round and round and round. For those of you that are fully extemporaneous or sight callers, you should always check your modules, because sight callers do call modules, and your flow sequences. And the reason is, you know that module works, you know that flow sequence works, but what happens before it, what happens after it? A lot of callers forget to do that. They say, oh, here's a corner box module. I'm in a corner box. I'll just throw that in. But I've suddenly called square through, and now I'm calling a star through, and now I'm calling a right and left through because my module has led me to that. Oops, I didn't pay attention to body flow of the module with the before and the after. You've got to take that into consideration when you sight call. That's where your call analysis comes in. It's important, if we're going to understand body flow, we've got to look at it in conjunction with other sequences, not individual movements. And this is why I keep saying the 4-point check. So to understand this, let's look at good flow, mediocre flow, and bad flow. So I think we're pretty much agreed. If I have a standard line and I call right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel, that flows pretty well. Right and left through, there it is. I'm leading the lady in. I can lead her with a slight pressure on her back. I can draw the hand across. The lady's right hand is free going in to do the flutter wheel to pick up the opposite dancer. And it's a forward flowing coming out of the flutter wheel. The man's left hand is free. He's in a forward flowing action. He can go right in. Really nice flow. So right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel is good body flow. Can we all agree on that?
Yep.
Okay. What about if I take that same sequence, right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel, and I do it off heads square through, right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel? Is that good body flow? The body flow itself is good. We've already established that. But it's uncomfortable for the dancers because I'm in a very tight situation. So if I do, after a Ferris wheel, centers pass through, right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel, the dancers are cramped in a very tight formation. So they can do it. We know the flow works, but it's uncomfortable because of space. That's something else we have to take into consideration. And then if we look at the same sequence, but we just change the flutter wheels around, right and left through, reverse flutter wheel, flutter wheel. I think we can all agree that that's bad body flow. Somebody want to explain to me why? Anybody? One of the new callers? I don't have your names up on my screen, so I can't ask anybody, so jump in here.
The right-hand dancer would have the forward body flow, so you're having the wrong person go in. It's
Okay,
breaking
so
the body flow.
On the right and left through, the right-hand dancer, the girl, is going to have a forward body flow. The left-hand dancer, the boy, is going to have a reversing body flow, and suddenly he's got this backing up action with a sudden change of direction. Everybody has to stop and adjust. The flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel is good, but that awkward reversal of direction is bad. The body flow is only one aspect of smooth dancing. And what I would say is it's only one aspect, but it's one of those aspects that without it, all those other important things that go into the dance just do not work. So you have to be aware of it. So within that, there's a couple of, I call these the cardinal rules, but you can call them what you want. The cardinal rule that you have to remember is we get hooked up on variety, making sure we use all the calls, doing all these other kinds of things. And we forget body flow. So here's your rule. Never use choreography that is not flowing for the sake of variety. Okay? Bad choreography for the sake of variety is bad calling. That's your cardinal rule. Bad equals bad. Okay? Now, this happens an awful lot, but the main reason it happens with new callers or callers teaching is they've got this list of movements that they want to get through. So they got this tick list. They're more focused on the tick list, making sure they call every movement on their list, rather than being focused on the dancers and the dancers' comfort. The second reason this happens is callers tend to get bored. You know, they're calling a sequence, you know, right and left through, dive through, pass through, centers, right and left through. Pass through, right and left through. Oh, well, I'm getting bored calling this chicken plucker, and I'm going to throw in a module there just for variation. And they're not paying attention to the before and the after effects of that module. That usually is a hand issue. Okay. Or the third reason is they're trying to gain the dancer's attention, such as trying to fix a problem or break a dancing habit with a gotcha. Remember back when I said double pass through track 2, the caller will go, do a double pass through, cloverleaf. And the dancers have already gone toot toot, and they started going, and he gotcha. That's a tool that many callers use to break a dancing habit. They'll give an intentional pause, leading them to the wrong conclusion, and says, gotcha, you have to pay attention. Well, the reason they're not paying attention is because that caller trained them not to pay attention. All that caller is doing is says, remember what I taught you? Don't do it. And I'm going to keep doing what I say is wrong, and I'm going to keep saying you're bad dancers. Never use a gotcha to fix a problem. Okay. Variety adds interest and enjoyability to the dance. Never, never, ever make it feel uncomfortable. Now, we need to talk boys and girls. It was said before, but I definitely think it's worth reiterating that callers should think of more than one dancer when considering a combination sequence or a routine. Think of all the dancers involved in that routine, but especially think of the ladies. Now, I'm not trying to be offensive here, girls, but the truth is that most callers are men. Most lady callers have been taught by men. And although this is slowly changing, it's a proven scientific fact that men are generally lazy. Okay, whether or not that's changing is still going to be open for a debate. That's a whole session for another time, whether or not men are lazy. With that in mind, however, callers tend to find excellent flowing choreography for themselves, or this is how they were taught, which is usually from a man's perspective. It's not uncommon to overlook the fact that usually 2, sometimes all 4 of the ladies have turned into human corkscrews, or as they say in Germany, into figure skaters. Okay. The growing trend now is ladies tend to watch, and mental imaging is focusing on the right-hand lady instead of the left-hand man, and things like this are changing. For lady callers, you'll see an overflow for men being figure skaters, and for men, you'll see an overflow for ladies being figure skaters. The trend is still, it's the ladies being turned into the ground. So just be aware of that. And the way to fix that is the 4-point check. And to understand that, what we need to look at is the 7 aspects of body flow. Lost Stephen. There it is. Okay, so body flow has the following 7 aspects. Now, there's probably more, but if you get these 7 right, you will always be, well, not always, but generally be okay. These are the most common, and it's important to be aware that there are or may be exceptions to each and every one of these, which are all part of the dance. These could be such things as using the right hand twice, because it's defined that way, or a deliberate direction change. You know, that's part of the movement. These are, however, not common things, but they remain a big source of argument. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to have a bit of discussion of that at the end of this presentation. So the first aspect we need to look at is forced. Is it forced, or is it a natural direction change? Okay, because there are direction changes. Dancers should not be forced to change direction sharply. Okay, an obvious example from right hand waves, if we do ends run, bend the line. Okay, ends run into the center, and then they got to back up out of the center. That's an obvious change. Other bad flow experiences that we see with a lot of new callers managing formations are from lines facing out, wheel and deal, zoom. Ooh, what's wrong with that? In, out, sudden change direction flow. From facing couples, star through, veer left. Ouch. From a right-hand box circulator, ocean waves. Out-facing dancers, or sorry, out-facing dancers run, veer left. That'd be, sorry, from a right-hand box. You've got that kind of a flow, veer left, run, veer left, out-facing dancer run, they're running in, they're veering left, they're running out, they're veering left. That other dancer has to slide over and then complete direction change. Aspect 2 is repetitive hand use. Dancers should not be forced, and you notice the emphasis here is forced, to use the same hand twice in a row. For example, from a double pass-through formation, so I've got the center dancers facing. Square through 3, 1, 2, 3, touch a quarter. Right hand, that's a forced change. From a static square, heads, square through 4, star through. Oh my goodness. For the guys, right hand, great. For the ladies, right hand, left hand, not a problem. But for the guys, that's terrible body flow. From standard lines, star through, right and left through. There's a lot of discussion about that because the hand position on the coming off the star through is down. I personally don't like it. You have to make your own decision on it. To me, that's getting just on the cusp of being forced. From standard lines, we hear this an awful lot, especially at new callers. Star through, Alaman left. Think of that poor girl. Again, we've got the star through, but the hands down. Is that there's argument for that. The third aspect, or this is overflow. You've got to avoid overflow, and that's from time to time the turning direction has to be changed. So consider, I'm going to put a sequence up, and we'll just consider this for a second. So let's put terminations up on the screen. Can you guys all see terminations there?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so let's have a quick look at this. Okay, so we've got heads, touch a quarter, boys run, star through, slide through, touch a quarter, boys run, partner trade, touch a quarter, girls run, star through, California twirl, slide through. So if we look at that, you know, logically, every one of these movements is properly done, properly executed. They go the right hand, the left hand, not a big problem overall. However, look at this. Around and around and around and right turn and right turn and right turn and forward and right turn and so on and forward. Watch number 1 man. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. Right, 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 right. Oh, there's a sudden sideways turn, right, right, and now I've got a left-hand turn. I've got one sideways action. That's terrible flow. If I look at the number 4 lady, or, you know, I've got essentially the same kind of thing. Left, left, right, left, right, left, 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 left. Okay. It doesn't look bad until you actually start looking at these combinations one after the other. So other examples often include 2 particular moves called back-to-back. While technically they're able to do it, they simply don't work. Good example, spin the top followed by a fan the top. How would you like to be the center dancers on that? Swing through followed by a fan the top. Cast off 3/4 followed by a swing through. That's only 4. Yeah, we do that. But why is that bad body flow? Because of the anticipation. There's a lot of things in there that are going. Cast off 3/4 followed by a center's run. Now I've done 3, 4, 5. As soon as you start hitting those 5/4 turns, you're into overflow. Aspect 4 is room to move. The dancers have to be given room to move to perform their movements. Okay, square breathing, that's when it breathes out and breathes in. Should be natural. It shouldn't be forced due to the choreography. Remember when I said we've got those facing lines and we call touch a quarter, boys run, trade, roll, pass the ocean, those kinds of things, where we're forcing the dancers to get out into that tidal wave. They've got to expand out, then they've got to come in, they've got to go out, and we're forcing them to do that. From parallel boxes, things like right and left through, flutter wheel and reverse flutter wheel, that's really tight. From a static square, heads, star through, and zoom, very common, but and I was guilty of this one as well, it's very awkward for the dancers because a zoom is a forward and away action. The dancers that are face to face in the center after a start through have no room to go forward and away. They're immediately there, so they have to do that sudden turn away from the center. It's not comfortable. Aspect 5 is dancer expectation and anticipation. And we've looked at these briefly, but now we're looking at deeper look. This comes when logically it should work, but they don't work due to the nature of that actual movement. Okay, the short time it takes to complete, or many other reasons. So, you know, logically it says this should work, but it doesn't because the nature of the movement has a short time or some other aspect to it. It doesn't take long to complete. It takes longer to say than it does to dance. What happens is it creates a dancer expectation of a forward action, a forward flowing action with a different hand use. And with regard to that hand use, this is almost the same as using the same hand twice, but with contact already established. And it's kind of hard to explain, so I'll use it as examples. For instance, from facing lines, touch a quarter, zoom. Now, that's actually used quite a bit in some of the singing call choreography in Europe. You don't see it much these days. It's older dancing. It was wrong back then. It's still wrong now. And the reason is touch a quarter is anticipated by a forward flowing action. The zoom logically is a forward and away because the dancer in front of the dancer that's moving forward, the lead that's going to go away, is not going to be there. But it doesn't flow because the anticipation is that forward action. You want to put a circulate in there or something to break up that flow, a release that's still going forward to create the flow that's going to give them the room and break that anticipation of doing something else than what you want. Another example would be from facing couples. Dixie style to an ocean wave, left swing through. I see this a lot in choreography. What's wrong with that? Anybody? Francis? Yolanda? Dixie style to an ocean wave, left swing through. Yes, Keith. You're going to have to unmute yourself, Keith.
Two left hands.
Key, you're muted. There you are.
Okay. I think the dancer expect the center to do something.
That's right.
After-
That falls in. Absolutely.
Two left
Dan-
hands.
It's which?
Two
Say that
left
again.
hands. Two left hands.
Yeah, it's two left hands. Even though the hand is joined, Dixie style to an ocean wave, we've got that. We've got the hand. It's not overflow because
It's
we
only
haven't
three
gone
quarter.
that 5. It's that dancer expectation. We expect coming in, right hand is going to join in the middle to make that wave. We expect to do something with that right hand. And so you're both right, but the biggest thing here is the dancer expectation of doing something with the centers. From facing couples, slide through, partner trade. We see it all the time. Slide through, partner trade. In some cases, that will work, especially if your slide through gets you facing out, because your anticipation is, I want to normalize and face back in. But if you're not, if you do slide through, partner trade to a trade by, and then and then Alaman left, it's going to feel awkward because you anticipate a forward flowing action that is going to take me somewhere where I'm not leading them. From parallel ocean waves, walk and dodge, wheel around. We see this an awful lot. There's this wheel around is becoming a very, very popular movement lately, which is great, absolutely fantastic. But why is walk and dodge, wheel around bad flow?
Because of the dodger.
Because of the dodger. Okay, so she's going to dodge and then she's going to wheel. And yet walk and dodge, reverse wheel around. She's got to dodge and then she's got to pivot on the spot. No, she's got to back up on the spot. That's considered good body action. Well, that's because of dancer anticipation, hand contact, and the way they go. that forward flowing action, there's nothing wrong with having a sudden change of direction, but having a jarring change of direction is very odd. And we're going to talk about that at the end, especially when we get to everybody's favorite walk and dodge partner trade. But please leave that for the end because I want to talk about that specifically. The sixth aspect is called, I call it the wayward hand, okay? This is the ongoing argument about where the hand should be at the end of a movement, as opposed to, does the hand during the movement make the next call awkward? So we all know that you can use the same hand twice. Touch a quarter, scoot back. Classic example, right hand, because it's a release and a right hand. There's nothing wrong with that. And yet touch a quarter, turn through. Oh, wait a minute. If I'm in that situation, touch a quarter centers, or those who can turn through, that's awkward. And the reason for it is all of these factors come into play. A good example of these wayward hands, right and left through, swing through, very awkward. Right and left through, star through, awkward. Chain down the line, square through, awkward. Most of these awkward wayward hands deal with that positioning of the hand following a courtesy turn. Because gentlemen, your hand is in the back of the lady. And then afterwards, you got to reach down, come around underneath, and you're starting with the right hand. Okay, that's why it's awkward. It's called the wayward hand. Some callers say you can get away with it because, you know, the courtesy turn at the end of each movement, you're supposed to take the hands. Yes, you are, but movements are supposed to flow and blend, and having to blend that hand down, take your lady's hand, reestablish a partner relationship, then release it and go into the next is pretty much the same as doing a right hand to a right hand movement. It's not comfortable for the guys. The seventh aspect is dealing with offsets. Now, some calls end a bit offset so that the dancers may not be in exactly the right position for the next call. This is where you have to anticipate dancer anticipation, okay? Some things that should not be acceptable are acceptable because of the dancer's anticipation. You cannot rely on that for everything, okay? This is especially true when you have A2 and challenge dancers dancing at a basic or an SSD mainstream dance, because they use offsets in their choreography as part of the mental challenge, whereas prior to that, we've taught dancers to adjust the offset to make for smooth dancing. And we get that conflict between the body actions or the counter dancing of a challenge dancer as opposed to a basic dancer. Okay? What you want to do is you want to make your choreography smooth flowing in a way that the dancers don't explode the square, as in spread it out too far from the desired formation, so that they have to constantly adjust to the next call. So consider this. Picture a line of 4 in your head and call square through 2, trade by. Okay, square through 2, trade by. Right hand, left hand, forward, trade by. There's a partner trade. The dancers are expanded, but it's not awkward because that's the dancer anticipation that's coming into it. It's offset, but that's the dancer anticipation coming into it. If I take those same standard lines and I do, everybody do the girls' part of slide through, everybody trade. That's awkward because the dancer's anticipation is a forward action. But if I call everybody left touch a quarter and trade, it works because I've got hand contact that counter dances that anticipation. From lines, tag the line, face left, centers trade. Can anybody see what's wrong or what's right with that? Tag the line, face left, centers trade. Anybody?
Would it be crowded in the middle?
No.
It's not real, but center dancer feels like backwards, and it's not good for the trade.
Okay. Look at where they are and tag the line and stop. Okay. Here they adjust, but real dancers don't adjust. So let's just back that up a bit.
Yeah, they pass right shoulder, so they have to lean back.
See how they pass? And it's just before in here. 99.99% of the time, this little, see how he's turning in? Doesn't happen. They go straight ahead. Now, if I say face left, I've got the number one man is facing out, the number two lady is facing in, and they're offset like this. I don't know if you can see my hands there, but you're right. They have to back up into the position that you want to be. It's awkward for them. So that causes a left turn and a sudden backup center straight. On the other hand, when you look at from a double pass through, center square through 3, so I've got, I've done a Ferris wheel, center square through 3, Alaman left. The dancers are offset, the center dancers are exploded out. Their right hands are pretty much face to face. They could reach in with the right hand logically, other than they've just finished doing something with their right hand, but they adjust their body for the Alaman left, and that's smooth. Why is that smooth? Anybody?
It's done on such a regular basis.
Dancer anticipation, conditioning, training, hand availability, the kinesthetics of the body motion, and the counterbalancing of the dancers doing the Alaman left will make that smooth. It's no different than square through 3, right, left, do, si, do, because the left hand, I'm ready for something with the left hand, right, left, right, ready for the left, do, si, do. The dancers have to adjust to the right in order to do that left, do, si, do, and yet it's smooth because dancer kinesthetics and anticipation. Absolutely correct. I don't know who that was because I can't see you right now. Okay, so if we look at this big picture holistically, okay, it's important that you look at the whole picture to achieve comfortable balance. And if you only look at one aspect of body flow, that may be fine, but that aspect, while it's perfect, puts the whole thing out of balance. So with that in mind, let's consider a sequence here. So let's reset that, paste that, and hopefully that'll work. And of course it doesn't work. Reset, paste. Putting in the square, maybe that'll help. So here's our sequence. Heads, promenade halfway, or sorry, the heck just happened there? Heads, promenade halfway. Same heads down the middle, do the right and left through. Same heads, square through 2, right and left through. 8 chain 2, star through. There we go. Why is that not doing that? Okay, let's
right
that.
and left through.
Let's go heads. Promenade 1/2. Heads, right and left through. Heads, square through 2. Right and left through. 8 chain. I chose this figure specifically because it is off a recorded singing call on a good label. Now, let's have a look at all these aspects of body flow. So I'm just going to put it on normal. Everybody watch this and then we'll just have a quick discussion about it. Okay, so it starts with heads promenade. So heads promenade and go halfway down the middle there. Do the right and left through. Square through 2. Do the right and left through. 8 chain 2 and go now. Star through and a right and left through. Star through, swing your corner, I'll promenade. If love never lasts forever, well then, what's forever for? Kids promenade and go halfway. Okay, so it times well. What's wrong with it?
Isn't there overflow with the number one lady?
Number one lady. Okay, let's have a look at the number one lady. So she's going to start, promenade halfway, right and left through. So we've got that. We've got the turning action, square through 2, 1, 2. It's a left turn, right and left through, right pulled by, courtesy turn. That's a left hand. 8 chain 2, forward across the floor. Star through is left hand. Forward, right and left through is a left hand. Star through is another left hand. Oh, there's that little circle developed. Swing your corner, and that's a right hand flow. You've got some large sweeping motions. It is getting a lot of lefts. There's 3 of those in a row, which hits that 5/4 turn once in the sequence. So yeah, it could be a problem. Anyone else?
Sides are going nowhere.
The sides are going nowhere. So, well, the sides get involved here at the right and left through. So I've got heads promenade halfway. So that's 10 beats, 12 beats. No, sorry, 8 beats of music. Right and left through, there's 16 beats of music. Square through 2. Okay, there's another 6 beats of music. So 6, 12, 20, you know, that's a fair bit. Not uncommon. No different than heads promenade halfway, walk into the middle, square through 4. Pretty much the same. But why would that feel different than heads promenade halfway, down the middle, square through 4? Because I'm calling heads, heads, heads. I'm specifically breaking those calls up and addressing one group of people that, just by the way I have to call it, is going to exclude the others. So it's a very valid point. What else is wrong with this?
Mel?
Yes.
There's a couple of direction changes. So just following number one man as he was going through, there was a couple of times that he goes forward and then suddenly he sort of backs up and does a reverse motion in the opposite direction. I couldn't exactly point out where, but sort of following it on the actual animation, there was a couple of changes there.
Your heads promenade halfway, right and left through. Oh, there's a backup. Okay. Square through, right hand, forward, right and left through. There's a backup. 8 chain 2, forward, forward, star through, forward, right and left through, forward, backup, star through. So we've got changes of direction. We don't have these big, large circular movements other than the swing. So for the guy, but we've got right, 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 right. It's a progressive overflow that we've established in a couple of places, but not dramatically so, because they're broken up with these right and left throughs here, the courtesy turns.
Mel?
And we've courtesy turn, and courtesy turn. So for the overflow for the boy, it's not so bad, but there are some other problems with the boy. Who said that? Was that Michael?
Here, Mickey.
Yes,
the head lady, she has a absolutely sequential overflow. Everything is going to the left, she does.
Yep.
She's running around in a circle, small and big, and the only change of direction is the swing at the end.
Yeah.
So everything else is really a sequential overflow.
Absolutely. Was that what you said, Ross?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's take off number one man. And that's what it's saying. Even though there's a large area being used, she's using the whole floor. For that side lady, it is absolutely sequential overflow. So there's a number of issues with that. So what I had was, one, we could fix this by breaking up the heads and sides, because it's not going to make a big difference. Heads promenade halfway, down the middle to the right and left through, sides square through. I'm not going to change the body semantics on the floor, but now I've engaged the other dancers. It feels different. Right and left through, right hand pull by, courtesy turn, hands in the middle of her back, followed by a square through. There's that wayward hand. Square through 2, right and left through. Is there a problem with that? Absolutely not. Good flow. But I'm following that right and left through with an 8 chain 2, right? Courtesy turn. And there's the next call after the 8 chain 2 is a star through. Oh, wait a minute. Right, left, right hand, left hand, star through. How's that for the ladies? Girls are using that left hand twice. Star through, right and left through. Boys are using the right hand twice. Star through, hands down, right and left through. And then I'm following it by another star through. There's the wayward hand. Again, I've got the boy using the right hand again twice. And then I'm following star through, swing. Both the man and the lady's hands are occupied and require an adjustment of both the hands and the position for a star through and swing. And for the ladies, left hand turning, right hand swing, very abrupt change of direction. Not so bad when you're doing a slide through because you've got the lady has room to adjust. But when you do it with a star through, that hand is coming down, it's in contact. That makes a very jarring change. Even though this is a recorded singing call figure, it is as you can see, it's a figure that is fraught with a lot of different aspects to it that pretty much breaks every one of the 7 aspects of smooth dancing.
The other thing is both of those star throughs are followed by a courtesy turn where a man's got his right hand behind the lady's back. He's got to bring it out and then do the star through.
Yeah. You mean it before the star through? There's the courtesy turn, the 8 chain through, star through, right and left through, star through, right and left through, square through, right and left through, 8 chain 2. Absolutely correct. Right hand, right hand. That's the wayward hand thing.
Yeah, but the additional problem is the man's got his hand behind the girl's back. He's got to drag that hand out before he can
that's
actually
what I'm talking
take
about. That's what I mean by the wayward hand. It's behind her back and he's got to reach around to come forward for the next call. It's in a bad position. Absolutely correct. Okay, so as a final note, what you've got to do is you've got to consider body flow as you strive for smooth dancing. You may have that absolutely perfect lead timing, perfect command timing, perfect execution timing, but if you don't consider the human body and the way it moves comfortably, even the best music and the best timing is going to make for uncomfortable dancing for your dancers. Callers have to strive to give and understand that smooth dancing requires so much more than just not using the same hand twice or changing directions every now and then. They're important, but they're not always necessary, nor are they always required. What is required, however, is a good balance of flow, direction change, hand activity that meets anticipation, expectation, and comfort as a whole picture. So remember that smooth body flow, like any other aspect of square dancing, has exceptions to all the rules. You've got to look at the dance as a total experience that involves dancing the patterns, good timing, the sensation of smoothness and flow, and the intellectual excitement, as well as many, many other factors. Competent callers know when to break the rules. They know when the definitions break the rules. Touch a quarter scoot back is one of those rule breakers, and yet it's smooth. And when they do it deliberately to enhance the enjoyment of the experience. So that caller will only do this when the total program goals require it. Certainly, most square dance evenings should be smooth flowing, comfortable patterns, direction changes, hand changes, without hesitation, without scrambling, and things that don't require abrupt changes of direction. But they do happen, they're part of the dance, and if they're part of the dance, they can be comfortable. So I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. What about partner trade, walk and dodge? You will note that a walk and dodge followed by a partner trade has not been discussed at any point by me other than that quick mention earlier. That was done specifically. You'll also note that if you take time to research documents and singing calls and many of the college criteria, the Caller Lab knowledge base, the GSI Caller School, the do not call lists, you're not going to find that combination, touch a quarter, walk and dodge, partner trade, on their do not call lists. It's not on there. And yet it remains a common focal point and a big argument that it's not smooth dancing. I stated earlier, there are exceptions. Most of the following is not my own thoughts, but it's based on all these Color Lab documents, discussions, notes, such as Tim Mariner's notes and choreographic notes. And those that knew Tim while he was alive know that he was, in his calling, the incarnate of smooth dancing. He summed it up best when he said, walk and dodge partner trade is only uncomfortable when the dodger, usually the lady, goes right and then makes a pivot turn as the right-hand dancer for the partner trade. And the reason for that is because the left-hand dancer gives her no room. Now, I asked about that and said, it's easily avoided by waiting until hand contact is made and touching hands prior to the portion of the trade. And I said, well, why does that make a difference? And he said, basically, the lady dodges right. It takes her 1 step to dodge and touch. It takes the man 2 steps to go across. There's a pause there. If he walks straight and takes her hand, a partner trade is a partner trade when you have hand contact, and it's very, very comfortable. If the lady starts doing her pivot before the man is in place, it's very uncomfortable. And because of that sideways action, he's going forward and he's not giving the lady any room because she's turning. So he's going to start turning and it crowds her in and it creates a very jerky and uncomfortable flow. If the man walks forward and they do not start that partner trade before they touch hands, it's going to be uncomfortable. If they do touch hands, it's not uncomfortable because the counter dancing. Okay. And he went on to say, this is easily avoided by waiting until hand contact is made and touching hands prior to the trade. One of the reasons for the touching of hands is that without it, whenever there's a forward action by either one or both dancers, there's a tendency for the dancer adjustment and crowding. And all partner trades, regardless of what the prior movement is, are uncomfortable when that happens. And he showed this. When walk and dodge has the right-hand dancer dodging left, in other words, you've got the right-hand dancer is walking and the right-hand dancer is walking, and then the right-hand partner facing out is dodging. The movement is comfortable because the right shoulder pass of the trade is a forward action. So the timing of that dodger is left step forward right. And it's comfortable because they're going forward. There's room for that pivot. Okay. It's automatic. However, he said hands should still touch before the trade. Unfortunately, few callers today use that much variety in their calling. The action of the side step forward for the trade by the dodgers is actually not uncomfortable at all. And it's very commonly used in square dancing, such as boys run partner trade, girls run pass through, all these other kinds of things. That side step forward action or side step turning action is very, very common. Now, a comparative is often made that, oh, it should be comfortable. We compare it with round dancing. Many callers have noted that round dancers do this kind of a body action seamlessly. And if you ask any round dancers that square dance, it's one of the most common and basic flowing steps in any round dance, and it should flow comfortably. I'm going to say this unequivocally. Do not ever compare body flow in round dancing to body flow in square dancing. Don't compare ballroom dancing, round dancing, or any other type of dancing to the flow in square dancing. The rhythm, the hand and body position, the footwork, and many other things are very, very different. The dance is specifically designed to accommodate those dances, the same as hand contact is specifically designed in square dancing, hand release, hand release. That argument, depending on the caller, is the dodger often tries to turn inward sharply, creating a direction change that is a pivot rather than a stepping forward action. And to break that, hand touch. As a last final note, there are many combinations and sequences, and this is what Mickey was alluding to. Even though that side lady had lots of coverage on the floor, her action was always left. Sequences that tend to lead to flow issues, such as large same direction movements through an entire sequence, do not often become evident until you dance them. That's why the 4-point check is there. Hopefully, however, there's enough material presented here, and that's a lot, to get you thinking about body flow. It's important to understand those aspects, and more importantly, to know what to do and what not to do. And there's lots of material out there. There's Tim Crawford's Caller Note. There's a Caller Lab knowledge base. There's the Do Not Call list on smooth dancing, all sorts of different things that are available. So I spent a lot of time on touch a quarter, walk and dodge, but I wanted to get that on the table and off the table before we got into the discussion. So that is, stop share, bring everybody up, and we'll just go through the questions. I want to thank everybody for coming in. Welcome back. It's our first day back on in the new year. We're now just starting into our third year of these sessions. But we've only got 2 years of this recorded. I'm just going to quickly go through the chat questions. Mark, were there any questions that came up in the chat?
None to me. The only one I've seen is from Guido. It says, what's the difference between from an 8-chain through formation, touch a quarter, scoop back, versus left touch a quarter, scoop back, in Dixie style to a wave, scoop back?
Dixie style to a wave, scoot back. Okay, so left touch a quarter, scoot back, not a problem. It's a left hand flow to a left hand flow. But if your dancers have not had the variety on that, what you've got is an anticipation of not doing it. That's what's going to create the hiccup. There's nothing wrong with that sequence. So if I take a standard box, heads left square through, or I get into that situation, pass through, left touch a quarter, scoot back. Scoot back is not one of those flows. Okay, so if I do left touch a quarter, left scoot back, not a problem. If I do left touch a quarter, scoot back, where I'm going to have problems is my dancers have been trained, scoot back is step forward, right arm turn, and they're going to reach across their body. It's not a right hand or a left hand movement. It's step forward and turn through with the adjacent arm. But if you have never done it, you may need to do a prompt a couple of times to make that smooth. It's no different than calling touch a quarter, centers, scoot back. I've now given that prompt to let the dancers know who I want to dance. If I do left touch a quarter, centers, scoot back, I've given a prompt to say, those ends, stand still. You're not involved in this. Hopefully that answers the question on the scoot back. And that's mainly conditioning and dancers. What was the other part of that question?
In Dixie style to a wave, scoot back.
Dixie style to a wave. Right hand dancer goes in, left hand, there's the wave, scoot back. Where is the issue on the flow of that? The dancer's going in to do the turn through? Absolutely none. The dancer facing out has an anticipation of doing a right hand action, not a left hand action. That's where the hiccup would be. So Dixie style to a wave, right hand, left hand turning. I've got that dancer. What's going to go on here? Here's my left hand wave, scoot back. I've got one dancer in the center that is facing out. That dancer in the center facing out wants to do a right hand turn by conditioning. It's a natural flow, even though it's a release flow. So how to get around that? It's a lefty, scoot back, or it's a, just that little prompt can help, and then adding variety. That kind of flow is not often used. Would you prefer if I, oh, there's Daryl sitting there. Would you prefer if I put terminations up so you could have a look at that?
Well,
Yes,
the reason why I put this in was your remark on left-hand turn after Dixie style to an ocean wave, feeling uncomfortable. But what I discovered in many times is that many callers teach Dixie style to an ocean wave not correct. And Dixie style to an ocean wave ends with a left touch a quarter, which means you don't have as a center a right hand movement. And but it's always called Dixie style to wave, centers cross fold, centers straight. They always go to the right. So my last sentence in the comment was, isn't that a trained anticipation?
Yeah. the difference there, and we have this argument on a number of movements, the same with Past the Ocean is another classic example of this. Past the Ocean is a forward action getting into the wave. There's no turning action into it, the last half of Past the Ocean. It's a step forward. However, the styling and the teaching of the styling is very contrary to the way the definition of it is. Dixie style to an ocean wave, there's the half sachet while the outside dancer doesn't turn in, but adjusts slightly and then does a left touch a quarter. The reality is when dancers start dancing in flow, they'll lead the right hand dancer in, turn their body to the right, meet the left hand, and they do a trade, which gives that kind of flow. That's a styling change, which creates a dancer anticipation. And if we go back to, let me just share my screen here. If we go back to this is this part here, the adequacy of training. If your dancers are unaware of this, styling sometimes interferes with the actual flow of a movement. So when we look at Dixie style to an ocean wave, let's undo that, let's reset that, go to lines. So we'll set up a flow here, right and left through Dixie style. Scoot back. Okay. If we look at this, I'm just gonna set it up so I can go through it slowly. There's my Dixie style. Notice how this dancer moves over and turns slightly right. Even the computer has adjusted that so that it's not a left touch a quarter, it's almost a 3/4 turn. Sorry. So as we go through, they've already moved. He's already started that turning. There it is. Now, if I do a scoot back, dancers facing in, step forward, turn through and come back, dancers facing out, fold into the empty position. That is not a problem for body flow. Notice these center dancers don't have hand contact yet. I guarantee you that 99.99% of your dancers, when they do a Dixie style, will make hand contact in the center, even before you call a scoot back. Which means that this dancer here, the number 4 and the number 2 men, their anticipation is a right hand action, forward and right.
Yeah, because it's natural to have a right hand hold in the middle because it says Dixie style to a wave.
That's correct. And when you do that, it's no different than touch to a wave, centers run. That's perfectly natural too. The dancer anticipation, the training and the conditioning is very different. But when you've got a body flow established, you've got a conditioned response established, this is where you get awkwardness for 2 of the dancers. If I looked at the number 1 man and his partner, and I looked at the number 4 lady, and I looked at the number 3 man, and I looked at everybody else, except for that number 2 man, that would look like a perfectly smooth combination. Logically, from a left-hand ocean wave, scoot back is a perfectly smooth flow. From a left-hand ocean wave, there's no disconnect. It meets all the technical parameters except dancer anticipation. And the dancer anticipation here is those centers want to do a right-hand action, and that dancer anticipation is only applicable to 2 of the dancers in the square because these 2 are moving forward. There's no problem with it. So if I do this, notice how awkward that is? Oh, that boy, even in the terminations, is just doing a left turn on the spot, not doing a forward folding action. That's the reason it's uncomfortable. And it's an excellent example of meeting those parameters, Guido, and thanks for putting that one in because I didn't consider it. When you do something like that, you have to consider anticipation, not by all of the dancers, but by individual dancers in your sequence. And it could be 1 dancer, 2 dancers, most likely, or all 4 dancers that are going to be affected by it.
But Mel, the anticipation that you're expecting the dancers to have is based on the fact that everywhere they dance, most callers use a right-hand action after that call. That's not necessarily what's absolutely required for that call. A scoot back is just fine. It's just that they're used to having somebody say center straight after a Dixie style.
even if they haven't, like I have seen Dixie style followed by a recycle. And back in the 80s in Europe, that was actually quite common because it led into a standard facing couples. I've seen touch a quarter zoom quite common, and it was very, very common when I learned to dance. The fact is, it's not because we teach Dixie style followed by a right hand ocean wave, or by a right hand action. We usually follow it because it is smooth, but we've created the anticipation up to this point where Dixie style is very, very late in the list of teaching, where we go right hand, left hand, we establish hand contact, we do Dixie style to an ocean wave balance, swing through, there's a right hand. We do Dixie style to an ocean wave balance, left swing through. We've done a stop action deliberately to create those flows. We've done Dixie style to an ocean wave, who's looking in, scoot back. That creates that one beat check step for the movement that prompts that anticipation where it will flow properly. But not every caller has the experience to do that or time that well. And it's a very, very valid point what you're saying, Brian. When dancers anticipate a flow, it's because we have conditioned that right hand, left hand flow right from day one of circle left, right and left grand, Alaman left, right and left grand, walk around your corner, turn partner right, left arm turn your corner, turn partner right, turn corner left. We've anticipated, or we've created those flows where right hand flows to left hand and hand contact has been stressed. Now when we're about 27 to 30 weeks into teaching and dancing and we're into the mainstream program, we're doing Dixie style, we can't expect them to automatically change their whole thought process because the definition says this should technically work. We can make it work by giving them prompts, by giving them a deliberate body flow break, such as balance, or doing all sorts of things. Imagine, I hear it called a lot of times, Dixie style to an ocean wave, split circulate. It's exactly the same, but the fact that we say Dixie style to an ocean wave and the pause is given, split circulate. Because we say split and overemphasize that, they know those centers have to let go of hands, and it doesn't create a jarring flow. And that's because we're giving an indicative prompt to say this is going to be different. You're going to be doing a left hand flow, and it will work.
Yeah, but
that comes with experience. That's one of those other intangibles. Who was that? Was that Mickey? Sorry,
Mickey,
let's stop for a second, Mickey. Brian, did that answer that question a little bit, or your comment?
Yes and no.
No, please expand. That's what it's for.
Well, no, I'm just saying that as callers, the dancers get used to things because of us. We put them into that situation. We put them into that situation. So if we're wanting to use that call a little more with a little more variety, then while we're teaching it, we'll do it so that they don't get that anticipation.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, you're absolutely correct. And the way to do that is to create the conditions where the dancer anticipation is anything could happen here, and I'm going to get an indication of what it is that's wanted, such as split circulate or balance or something that's going. I can guarantee you that in your own club, if you call Dixie style to an ocean wave scoot back and your dancers do it, that's because you called it that way and they're conditioned to know and understand and expect that kind of variety. But if you took that to an open floor without an indicative prompt, your dancers would break down. And it's an absolutely valid comment until every caller in the world calls the same way with the same indicative prompts to say it's going to be different, pay attention. We're never going to have that problem fixed. Mickey.
Yeah, I can go along with that because the conditioning is not about what we are used to call after the Dixie style, but much more or less it's indicated with the call itself with the name. Because if we say Dixie style to an ocean wave, then the dancers will connect to form the wave. And therefore, if they touch that right hand and then are again called and asked to work on the left side, it is not smooth. If you would like to call that combination, and that's tricky, we could, after the right and left do, have a half of a half sachet, and then have the center's right wheel by left touch a quarter, which would be the same path they're walking. But since with a left touch a quarter, we not usually create more or less an ocean wave, but a box or a mini wave situation, it is much easier for the dancers to follow and not to be disturbed by having an ocean wave on connecting in the middle with the right, but having a left-handed action to do.
Absolutely correct, Mickey. What you're doing though is you're not calling Dixie style to a wave. What you're calling is half sachet, once and a half, centers pass through, left touch a quarter, scoot back. And the flow
I wanted to point out that you could call the same thing.
I understand that. Let me finish, Mickey. When you do a left touch a quarter scoot back or a touch a quarter scoot back, that has a very different flow than a wave to a scoot back. So although the movements do the same and I'm using an equivalent to achieve the same, I can use that equivalent to achieve a better body flow and get the outcome I want. But you have to also consider that using an equivalent is not calling a movement. It's doing movements to replace, to fix problem. That's a whole new session in itself of why we use equivalents. And you are absolutely correct. It's a good way of breaking habits without using a gotcha. For instance, Dixie style to an ocean wave, scoot back. It's a lefty, gotcha. That's an absolute wrong approach. What you're saying is a right approach. What Brian was saying is the use of variety is a right approach if you're constantly doing it. Absolutely. And you're both absolutely correct on that. But to just substitute it and say, well, and then if you go back to that and say, and that's how you do a Dixie style, that's why you don't do a Dixie style with the turn, all you're doing is chastising your dancers. And I know that's not your intent. That's not what you're saying, but that's the way it could be interpreted. And
if the centers do a scoot back, that'd be fine.
Absolutely, because you're still in a right hand flow. And that's actually quite common. That's the same as Dixie style to an ocean wave swing through, chain down the line is a beautiful flowing sequence, and it works really well. And we've had a lot of good sessions on flow sequences that deal with this. The two things that I really wanted to point out, Roz, you said it, and Mickey, you elaborated on it, is that last thing at the end. We did that little sequence there where you had right turn, right turn, right turn for the boys, or sharp turn, wayward hand for the lady, the head lady, great. But when you looked at that side lady, it was left, large flow left, 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 large flow left, left. We get that generally with boys, large flows. We get touch a quarter, scoot back, boys run, couples circulate, Ferris wheel, you know, and you've got that flow, flow, flow. Even when there's a stop, if you have long sequential sequences of broad actions with all right hand flow, you're going to get that sensation of overflow that you want to avoid. And one of the best ways of doing it is, Daryl, are you still with us? Daryl Clendenin?
I am.
Daryl said this a long time ago in one of the other sessions. There's a tendency for these flows to cause overflow, but if you work the grid with simplicity, you cannot help but break that overflow. The chicken plucker action working the grid is going to give you that right hand, left hand flow. And that was going back a couple of years in these sessions. Adding and incorporating something that's going to work the grid left and right or up and down is going to automatically break, in most cases, that large sweeping overflow that tends to establish for the sake of variety. Go ahead, Daryl. Did you want to expand on that, or?
No, not really. I'm taking all this in. I'm learning so much. Thank you.
You saying you're learning something from me is probably one of the biggest flattering comments I have ever received.
Tell me something. Are you on a daylight savings time or something? I thought this didn't start till 4 o'clock my time.
A 9 a.m. my time.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles? Give me a second. I'll look up what, because I may have put the wrong time if there was a time change here. So give me one second.
It should be 2 o'clock.
That's what it says, 2 o'clock. I saw that.
Wow. Am I ever late? Wow. Okay. Carry on.
2 p.m. Los Angeles, California, and Vancouver.
I'm feeling kind of dumb right now, so carry on.
You had me worried because I thought maybe I put the wrong time up because I've done that before. Okay, Goo is, sorry. I'll get to your question in just a second. Couple more comments that I would replace in that one sequence where they had the star through, right and left through, I'd replace those with slide through. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I wasn't looking at fixing the choreography. I was looking at being awareness of why this was bad body flow. That one sequence is a recorded sequence. It was recorded that way because it was recorded for new dancers that hadn't learned slide through, that have only done this stuff in the basic program. And this was the nice sequence that they could do and do all of that. And there's this tendency for new callers, especially calling to new dancers, to use material that doesn't always flow nice, but has flow with little tiny things, 8-chain 2, 8-chain 4, followed by a right hand movement, a star through or something like that. Because that courtesy turn, it's only on the 2 of the dancers, 2 of the boys have that problem and they get overlooked, as we saw in that last session. Last thing, what have we got here? Goog has said, which is best or are both possible? Right and left through, touch a quarter. Right and left through, left touch a quarter. Okay, so let's throw that one open for discussion. I can see a couple of issues with both of them right off the top of my head. Right and left through followed by a touch a quarter, or right and left through followed by a left touch a quarter. Let's pull this up here.
Well, that wayward hand again, haven't you? From the boy having to come from the back, then to bring that hand round to do his right hand again.
Okay, that's one thing. So on the right and left through, the hand is behind the back, followed by a touch a quarter. So right and left through, right and left through. There, the hand is behind her back. Touch 1/4. And there's also a backup action followed by a sudden direction change, which is not too bad because it's a constant repetitive, it's almost a convention action that after right and left through, your next action is going to be a forward action anyway. So that's not so bad. But again, you've got that wayward hand. So would we all agree with that on a right and left through followed by a touch a quarter? That's got a couple of issues because the hand behind the back.
Got a solution.
Sorry?
I have a solution.
Not yet, not yet. We'll get to solutions in a minute. Okay, so let's look at, okay, don't look at the square through getting to the left hand, but let's do a, actually, well, why not? Why not? Let's reset the whole thing and let's do a heads left square through.
I could prefer if you did it from lines actually, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, we can set it up for lines. It doesn't matter. We can do it from couples too if we wanted, but left, sorry, right and left through, left, touch 1/4. Okay, so if we do the right and left through, we've got the hand, the lady's left hand is in front of her body. She's turning, forward action. Her left hand is engaged. The man's right hand is engaged. The man's left hand is engaged holding the lady's hand, and they're doing a courtesy turn as an action. Now we're going to go forward into a left touch a quarter. What are the inherent positives or inherent negatives with that one? Anybody? Martin, you've been very quiet. What do you think?
Okay, let me know.
Well, I would never call a right and left through followed by a left touch a quarter because the body of both the men and the women are more tending to go to the left. So the right hand is if the hand to choose. It's a turning action. They are turning left, so they're more in a veer left situation.
This is one of the things that falls very well into the timing and the action, and I was absolutely in complete agreement with you. Right and left through veer left is a forward flowing left action. This is where we call into the body offsets, but the body offset is not because of the position of the dancers at the beginning of the call. It's the position of the dancers leading into the next call, which is correct, but their anticipated flow is left. To do a left touch a quarter, they have to go against the anticipation, which is a left flowing action, to do a right flowing action to get that left touch a quarter. Even though coming off a square through 3 to a left touch a quarter has the same right hand adjustment, because of hand availability, it becomes a flowing acceptability, and it works. Off a right and left through, the lady's left hand is engaged, the man's left hand is engaged. The body action feels like I want to go forward and to the left with the dancer, and suddenly I have to go to the right. It's counterintuitive, and the support that we have with counter dancing, the two bodies working together, is awkward, not only with our partner, but it's awkward with the dancer in front of us to counter. That's what creates that jarring change of direction, and that's why that would be awkward. Absolutely correct. I just expanded it to hit all the points that we've discussed.
However, I would like to mention, Mel, that I think there is a change in the way people were taught how to dance, and your example from the rhythm or the singing call you had.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention. I think you know the record I'm talking about. I didn't want to mention any records.
Well, you were singing the tune.
What's forever?
Oh no, that's my sorry. Let me correct that. That is not the figure that's on that tune. That everybody has a go-to tune. I use that as my go-to tune because that tune can fit almost any piece of choreography. Doesn't matter if it's short, sweet, long, flowing. That tune will fit any piece of choreography if it times out well. But that is not the figure that's on that tune, What's Forever For. I just happen to be, that's my go-to default tune for testing choreography. Sorry.
Okay. Let's get away from the song. But if you look at YouTube videos from dancers in the 50s and 60s, you see a more artistic way of dancing, and finishing a right and left through was the immediate release, and they gave boys right and girls left hand, waiting for the next command. Nowadays, the courtesy turn and the hand availability, dancers are not as active anymore. I'm lacking words there.
You're absolutely correct. It was very common to have a right and left through followed by a swing through. It was very common to have a right and left through followed by a star through. But I call that the wayward hand. That's what falls into, like I didn't say bad choreography and good choreography. I've added that category of mediocre choreography. And that falls into the mediocre because dancing has changed. The same as flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel from boxes is very different than flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel from lines. It falls into that mediocre category.
But going,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. But going back to what Brian said, that the callers are responsible for that anticipation. Callers are also responsible for teaching the calls, and I think that dancers have a obligation to do the square breathing, for example, when you said head square through 4, then followed by a right and left through flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel. You criticize that body flow because of the space, but that's what the dancers have to do by themselves because they were taught by the callers to adjust that space.
Yes. Yeah, perhaps not the best example coming off of that because there would be a natural square breathing. What I'm saying is don't force them into that. For instance, if I do head square through 4, right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel, sweep a quarter into lines, that will generally flow. If I do from the lines star through, right and left through, flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel, it doesn't flow because it's crowded. So you have to look at the whole thing holistically. Square breathing should not be forced, but we're digressing. We can come back to that in a bit. I just want to finish addressing Goog's comment. Mickey, you said you had something in relation to Goog's comments, that you said there's a way of looking at that you can fix that. So let's get back to the or right and left through touch a quarter or right and left through left touch a quarter.
Yeah, either if he wants to touch quarter right, then it would be a square through to take an equivalent, and on a third hand touch a quarter, or to have a left square through and then on the third hand left touch a quarter.
My intention was not to get into a certain position or so, but I'm not agreeing with Martin when you say that no, you can't do it to left, because what I think is that this is an example where delivery plays a very big difference. The timing of how to give the course. Right left through, touch a quarter. That's not a problem. It's okay. You have that right hand, but they should be able to fix that, unless they can't do a square through or anything else either. However, if you do a right left through and give the left touch a quarter in so good time that they have to blend into a left touch a quarter, it flows wonderfully. So
Yes, and I can agree with you. I can agree with you on that, Good, but that is the same argument as right and left through lead to the right, right and left through veer to the right. If I look at that analytically and I look at command timing, sorry, if I look at lead timing, command timing, and execution timing, a right and left through veer right, if it's given just at the apex, so when the dancers are in that two-face line portion of the courtesy turn, hypothetically speaking, and I call the veer right there, it will blend. That will only blend smoothly and comfortably, going back to what Brian was saying earlier. If your dancers have been taught, if your timing is absolutely perfect, if you use that kind of variety, and in your club, if you call that, your dancers are going to dance that absolutely great. When you go to an open dance, your dancers are going to dance that absolutely great. But 90% of the floor will not, because not every caller has that kind of timing. And if I call right and left through, left touch a quarter, the dancer anticipation there is going to set the dancers into a condition where they're going to feel very awkward and very uncomfortable. They will do it regardless of how well your timing is. Some will do it and say, oh, that was different. Others will go, that was terribly uncomfortable. Whereas going as your first one, right and left through touch a quarter, that falls into the category of what I call the mediocre range. Dancers are conditioned to do that. Right and left through, swing through, right and left through, star through. After the right and left through to follow that movement, because we have conditioned the dancers right from probably week 2, week 3, depending on where you teach right and left through, to do that right hand to right hand flow. Right and left through, star through, right and left through, or star through, right and left through. There's a big argument about that because the star through, the hands come down, they're in front of you, and they're in the correct position for the right hand, right and left through. That's also in that category of mediocre in my book. I don't like saying there's good, absolutely good choreography, and there's absolutely bad choreography, because there is. But there's also a lot of choreography that's in that gray area in the middle that needs to be looked at a lot more closely than we do look at it. Had one more comment on that, and then I see Mickey, you have your hand up, and I think Roz, were you just moving, or did you have your hand up? Just moving? Okay. So who did I just say there? I forgot. Good. Yes.
Mickey was.
I'll give you the last comment on your sequence there.
I talk about anticipation. One of my favorite combinations is do sado veer left, and it's not always that works correct.
I actually hear that a lot as well, and that's another one of those gotcha type things. It's one that should actually move perfectly if your dancers have been taught to touch hands at the end of each movement. If they have not, it's the same as walk and dodge partner trade. Terribly uncomfortable if your dancers have not been taught to take hands or wait that 1 second or that one beat of music to make that hand contact. Mickey, you had your hand up. I think you were waiting.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing to Guge. I understand his thinking behind the left turning action, and go along and could go along with it if it's well trained and well timed, whatever. But I don't think it's, in general, it's worth the effort to achieve that goal, because I think it's not so danceable as the effort would be to train the dancers and to especially make them aware of the timing type thing, which is more or less in our obligation, the color's obligation. But you need dancers who are really on beat and really move with the music then, because this is really a thing of milliseconds where they have to adjust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of this, one second, Bob, I'll just address that and I'll get right back to you. One of the things that happens very much in this is the difference between a technical call analysis and working the choreography and dancing the choreography on your own, as opposed to adding that variable of live dancers. And remember at the beginning I said there's a lot of things that logically, kinesthetically, and by definition should work, should feel proper, should go. But they don't
Johnny
as soon
just
as
got a
you
hold
add
of
that variable of live
Doug?
dancers. And you have to keep
Doug
that
from
into the
Blue Jays?
anticipation.
He misunderstood
Excellent
about
comment,
the
Nicky.
start time. He said he'll be there next Saturday.
Bob.
Yeah, it was at a color lab in Reno, and I called and introduced a brand new tune from Riverboats called The Lion Sleeps Tonight. And it had a square through 4 right hand star, left hand star, do, sa, do, and couples veer left, chain down the line, roll promenade. And actually, before I called it, I stressed to everyone to do a proper do, sa, do, and you're going into a veer left. You would not believe the number of comments I got from the floor of people who come up and said, we never thought of that. We really liked it.
And why, I'm going to ask this question, and I mean it sincerely. This is not, why did it work?
Why did it work? Well, 2 things. I wanted them to not do the Hungarian or Highland fling type swing in response to a do, sa, do. And I stressed that before we did it, because I talked them through it, I said, this is for body flow. And that's it. Once they did it and experienced the body flow, they liked it.
Mm-hmm. And that's an excellent example. This goes very much into what you were saying, Goog. The reason that worked is, 1, you gave them the fact that this is going to happen. You prepared the dancers for success by telling them. And the second one, you remember what I said about changing a body flow or an anticipated command or changing a commonality for the sake of a gotcha to fix a problem? This is an excellent example of how to properly fix a problem. Rather than saying do, si, do, veer left, if you had called that cold, I'll bet you your comments would not have been as positive. You prepared the dancers for success and they succeeded at it. And then you probably wouldn't have had that because you called that, I believe, at the Color Lab convention in and you had a floor full of callers dancing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you got onto a floor full of callers and called head square through, do a do, si, do, veer left, Ferris wheel, or veer left, chain down the line, you'd probably have all the callers go, oh, that's terrible. But you prepared them for success rather than calling it as a gotcha. And that's why it worked. And it does work. But
and because they
does not work
succeeded,
without that preparation.
Because they succeeded, they liked it.
Yep. And that goes back many sessions we had, and Daryl was one of the biggest strong proponents. And if you listen to a lot of his older material and some of his writings, preparing the dancers for success, do, si, do, veer left. Would I call that? I would never call that cold. If I was trying to achieve something specific, I have a change which is a deliberate and judiciously used. It would probably be the only time I would call that in the evening, that combination. But I would prepare and set up my dancers for success, and I would do everything I could to help them through to have success, because once they have success, it's their success, not yours. And their success means happy dancers, that's your success.
Really easy to prepare them if you want. You say do, sa, do, and couples veer left. That's all you need. And you've got it.
So, Absolutely. I love the examples because they're fitting. You guys, it's like I gave you guys my presentation beforehand. You're hitting all the points to give examples of. Anyone else have any comments? Any queries, questions, discussions? Okay, well, that's all the comments and questions we have in chat. That is pretty much it for today's session. I want to say welcome back to everybody. We hope to do a lot of these in this new year. We had talked previously about what we're going to look at as a program. I'm just going to share my screen for a second, if I can figure out how to do that again. And no, that's not my screen. What is going on here? Share screen. Why is this not working, Mark?
I don't know. There it is. It's working.
Yeah, but what's coming up on my screen is all you guys.
We're looking at definitions.
Looking at definitions.
There's combining calls combination, flowing awareness,
Okay.
modules 1, intro to modules, basic. That's
Okay,
what I
well,
read.
what's coming up on my screen is all your smiling faces. So I'm just, if you can see that, this is essentially what has been asked for. We're looking at starting again, but a little bit more in depth, looking at a couple of different things with a logical sequence. So it's almost going to be structured, hopefully 2022, hitting all these points almost like a regular caller session. But we're going to be going through definitions, interpreting versus understanding, which we touched a little bit, call analysis, combining call combinations, body flow and awareness, which we're talking about today, introduction to modules, FASAR, an introduction, isolated site, goal posting. And Daryl, I've been reading your articles on goal posting. I would love for you to give that presentation if you're available to, because I really like what you're writing there. Modules, fixed points, timing, singing calls, basic site resolution, mental image, working with other callers, smooth dancing, theming, programming, and so on and so on and so on. So these are the kinds of things we're looking at this year. If there is something, as I said before last year, if there's something that you really want to have a good look at, or you have a presentation that you think is going to be interesting and well worthwhile, by all means, let me know. Klaus, can you give a wave to everybody there? For those of you that have never met Klaus, there you are.
Yep, that's me.
Klaus, he has been calling now about 40 years, I think. And he taught himself to call. And if you remember when we were looking at the chicken plucker and the aspects, Bob Elling came on and gave us a different way of looking at it, keeping the dancers in sequence with the chicken plucker, which worked for him. And we had a lot of new callers going, wow, I really understand that. That works better for me than the standard chicken plucker. Klaus has a way of looking at calling the whole system that he sent me a presentation on. I've asked him to break it down into 2 sessions. And so we're going to have Klaus looking up, because I'm a firm believer that there is no one right way of calling. What works for me may not work for you. I will tell you 100%. Actually, I'm going to ask this quick. What is the absolutely most perfect calling method? Does anybody know it?
The one that works for you.
Yeah, you've heard me say it too many times. Absolutely. There is no
question.
right and wrong. The one that works for you is the best one to use. And the only way you're going to find out which is the best one to use is to openly and objectively look at all these other methods and see which one gels with you. So I've asked Klaus to come in. We're just working on the slide. So probably February or early March when we get it. Would that be a good time frame for you, Klaus? Yeah. And we're going to be looking at all things. If anybody has other things to put in, by all means, come on in, send us the suggestions. And we're going to go with Bob first, and then we're going to go with Guido.
Yeah, you were talking about Klaus's thing and mentioning translating. Are we going to have an English version?
Oh no, I was teasing Klaus because he sent me the prelim of the slides to have a look at, and I said this is something that it's very interesting, but I think it should be broken over to 2 sessions. but the last two slides were all in German still, because he hadn't translated them yet. And when I put him into the translator, what was coming out had nothing to do with square dancing, and we'll just leave it at that. Do not translate things word for word. It doesn't work.
I'm still working on it, and I have translated the last pages, and I split the thing in two parts, so we can start it.
Yeah. So we'll be having a look at that. There's a couple of little foundation things I want to get first. So February, maybe February or early March. Is that a good time frame for you, Klaus?
Yeah, I think yes.
Okay, good.
We have to look what the pandemic is going on, because on the weekend I have very often the club dances. But we will find a time.
We'll work around your schedule. And Guido.
I just wanted to rephrase that best call system. The best call system for me is the one that works for me, not for you.
That's what I just said. The one that works for me. So welcome back, everybody. I'm glad that you all come in for the sessions. I hope that we can keep these going. We are looking, once we get dancing back, I was hoping we'd get dancing back. We were looking at cutting these down to a fortnightly, but now we've shut down. We may keep looking at, or we may still cut it down to a fortnightly session. But we're going to go as long as we can. For those of you that are sending me emails and queries or chat things, please use my email that I use at the start. I'll just put that back up there. Share screen. Please use this email, because I monitor that one all the time. Or if you're going to send me messages on Facebook, by all means, send me a PM. Don't send me phone messages, because I just basically don't use my mobile phone that much. I'm not one of those that's constantly on it looking at what messages come in, so I may not get back to you very, very quickly. But if you have any suggestions or comments or things that you specifically want to look at, by all means. A few of you have been sending me singing calls and recordings for evaluation critique. I have no problem doing that, but I have now started my new job with the EPA, so I don't have as much free time as I had for the last few months. But I will still continue. I just may be a little bit slower getting back to you. Was that an uh-oh, Bob?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, just being able to keep in contact, Mel, that's all. But I usually wait to reply to an email until I see you on Saturday afternoon anyway.
No worries. Right.
Unless, of course, I fall asleep in the middle of the day, which has been happening.
I've just got a bit of a fun thing, if you can pin me. And this is for Daryl, especially for Daryl. So
you're going to get picked on, Daryl.
Yeah, if you can pin me. There's a rather old record here, and it's got a photo.
Oh, Sets in Order album? Okay.
Yes, that's a very, very old record. Back when I had a lot more hair than what I have now.
So I thought you'd enjoy that. I just found it yesterday. I was doing a clean out and I thought, oh, there's Daryl.
1981 with the +1 and the +2 program, I believe.
Yes, +1 and +2. So I'll have to play it because I actually haven't heard him call.
Is that on LP or 78?
LP.
It's 1981.
Don't get smart, Mel.
Hey,
But I
I
did
still
find
have
another one.
78.
They're not here, but I found Mike Sikorsky and Mike Seastrom on that one down the bottom.
One of my favorite calls that I used, or favorite records I had on 78 was Cry of the Wild Goose, and I can't find it anymore. My brother used it as a Frisbee, and I got very upset with him. And that particular release, it had Cry of the Wild Goose and Son of India is now worth about $4,500.
Wow.
So
wow.
I was very, very upset when he used that as a Frisbee.
I didn't use it often as a frisbee. It's probably a one-time use.
Actually, you got a lot of use out of it, but I could never use it. The record itself didn't break, but it was totaled. It was totally destroyed. Yeah, skipping it along a gravel road and various other things.
Anyway, Gooch has got something.
Sorry, Goog, are you trying to show us something there?
Yeah, I'll just try to remove the background here.
Yeah, you have to take the blurring off.
Yeah. There it is. Ah, I was getting on eBay. I got a lot of those That's in order records from 1970 and forward, which I just try to record and make something proper of. I don't think any one of you were there, but there were a few other guys. Marshall Flipper, Bob Osgood, and so on.
It could be bigger pictures if Mel stopped the square.
Sorry about that. Show those again, Goog. I am sorry about that. I didn't even realize I was sharing again. I must be accidentally hitting a button or not hitting a button.
If you pin Gooch, it'll show up better too.
Du hast oben rechts die drei kleinen blauen weißen Punkte auf blauem Feld. Wenn du da draufklickst, kriegst du das Bild in groß. Pinnen.
What he said.
Oh, I just talked to Klaus in his native language.
I know that, Guido, but in this way, it's bigger for all.
But I actually have another question, because I'm doing a lot of recordings from we have a lot of records at the club, and of some reason I also found this one. I don't know if that's possible to read, but it's come from you, Guido.
Just a moment.
Yes,
Matt,
Guido
can you pin him?
Yeah.
That's your recording sessions from way back, isn't it, Guido?
No. I don't know why it ended up at my club hall, but why did you send records to Gothenburg?
No, I didn't send it. Which records were in there?
It says Devil in the Fool, but I think there's from Rockingham Records at least. Yeah.
Oh, Guido, do you remember back in 1982 when you ordered a bunch of records and they got lost in the mail?
Huh?
We found them.
Yeah, something has been lost apparently, because this was my last address in Switzerland. I don't know why it got to your place.
Probably somebody ordered records at the same time and just.
I think,
well, now you know where they went.
I will say something on those old recordings, the sets in order LPs. If you have new callers that you're working with, mentoring, and you have access to those LPs, some of the finest callers that we've ever had in the activity were back in that particular era. And if you want to play how they were all patter, there was no singing calls on those. They were all patter. If you want to show somebody how some of the greats, not me, I was very lucky to be asked, tell you I wasn't that good, but Bob Fisk and hey, you know, the guys that really had fantastic rhythm.
That's the reason why I record them.
Yes, go back and play those for them. Let them try to emulate some of those guys because they really had it figured out.
Yeah, I have the entire collection.
When you look at Bob Osgood, Bob Fisk, and Marshall Flippo, you're going to see a difference not only in the the tempo of the calling and the flow sequences of the calling, but really pay attention to the delivery of lyrics and the filler prompts that they use as compared to what's used today. And some of the stuff, if you just took what they're saying out of the picture, you're going to wonder how the dancers got through that. But if you listen to it with the filler, you're going to wonder how in the heck can the dancers not get through it, because there's no way to fail. They are that good in some cases that they set them up perfectly with not only their timing, their delivery, but the prompts that they use and deliver so seamlessly as background filler are actually encouraging the dancers to dance and dance smoothly. And there's some fantastic material. So if you get them, absolutely.
I think I've got about 10. So.
Buddy Weaver is putting them out on his podcast.
Yep.
So you can listen to Buddy's podcast.
And there's some of them on the Color Lab knowledge base as well. What's that you got there, Yolanda? You're muted.
The fundamentals of square dancing. Is that Jack Bertha?
You're still muted. And you're still muted.
She does that to me all the time. Lift the album.
Bob Ross, isn't it?
No, Bob Ross.
So it's
Bob
Bob
Ross
Ross
was
and Jack Murtha.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's level 1, 2, and 3. I've got 3 of them.
Can you just put a little straighter to the camera and just say something so that you come up on everybody's big screen?
Okay. So it's the
Lift
fundamentals.
Lift it up so that we can. There you go. Now speak.
The fundamentals of square dancing.
Yeah. Now look at that diagram of what they've got. That's pictures of a chalkboard. That's the way it used to be done. Checkers, where flow is, how to explain things. A lot of people look at computer programs these days, which are absolutely perfect, but there's nothing, at least in my opinion, nothing that will ever replace a good old-fashioned set of checkers and a pencil and paper.
That's one place we don't agree.
What, you
I
like
mean,
the
I've
computer
done
program?
both. I grew up. I didn't use checkers. I used J. King's shorthand. You know,
Pen and paper. Yeah.
which
But
was
you're
essentially the same thing. But boy, I felt liberated when we got the computer, and I could do so much more.
I still remember I used to have notebook on notebook, and I had heads square through, and I'd have the drawn out each phase of the square through with the square and the circle and where they were each time and each number. It'd take me about 4 pages to draw out a singing call sequence so I could see it.
Jeez.
But
I did
and like I
find one
said,
more.
that works for me.
Oh wait, that's one I haven't seen. What is that?
I'm just going to say, if you're going to hold a record up, you've got to hold it square to the camera, and then you've got to say something so it comes up on your screen, because that way you take up, a lot of people have the speaking person on a bigger screen. That way we can actually see what it is. But if you hold it at an angle, all we're getting is the reflection of the light.
Yeah, and the only words I can read are square dance.
So start
Who
speaking,
is it?
Roz.
I'll have to read it. Hang on.
Can't
I
hear
don't know what's
you.
going on, Roz, but we can't hear you.
Okay. Hang on a sec. Is that better?
Yeah.
That's
now
better.
hold the record up to the screen now so we can see it. And
To say
and
something.
speak.
Right.
Now we can't hear you.
Speak up, Roz. We can't hear you.
Hang on. I'll read it first and then I'll show you the record. All right?
Okay.
Right. Perfect dance tempo library. Square dances, elementary to advanced, with caller Ron Jones.
Oh, that's one I was never heard of or seen.
Now you need to say something, Ross, because we only see Bob.
Yeah. Hey.
Can't hear you, Roz.
You can pin me and then I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
If you
Ron,
if you
Ron
go-
Jones is an was an Australian caller. He
Oh,
is now
thank you.
passed away.
Oh, that would be a fun listen.
In the 80s, we had Don Stewart, Square Dance USA, an LP. And all the German young callers knew the whole record by heart.
Oh,
I'm just going to add this on for those of you that don't know what Roz is referring to. If you want to pin somebody, if you just put your cursor over somebody's name, you'll see a mute and you'll see 3 dots, or you'll just see 3 dots above their name on the right-hand side. And about the 4th or the 5th one down, it'll say pin to first screen or pin to second screen. That's how you pin somebody to a screen so that they will always be on your big screen. And then you just remove it when they're finished.
okay.
That's to answer those
I'd like to
questions.
make a comment about the Sets in Order albums. I'm self-taught. I taught myself how to call. And I use the Sets in Order albums. And I don't know how many albums I played and went, nah, I can't do that. Nah, that doesn't sound right. Until I came across a session done by C.O. Guest. And I heard him call and I said, I can do that. I love his style. And of all things, years later, I went to a festival and he did a session and he did a review and me. And I had based all of my calling on him. And when I got done calling my pattern, he says, can anybody understand y'all?
Okay, I just sent Mark a note. We're going to stop recording for the